Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir. How are you?
You finding yourself?
I am wonderful. About a lot of days traveling from Charlotte, seeing my mother, my way back home.
Be careful while you're driving, sister.
Yes, sir. I'm putting you on my Bluetooth thing.
I had to make some last minute changes, so I'm hopefully everything will flow together smoothly.
Yes, sir.
And I think Brother Batin is just about done closing out his meeting as well.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we were just on with Brother Batin.
I don't know if everybody was on Mother's Day hiatus. I said I'm getting on. I'm driving. I'm not even riding. I got a good hour or so to go.
So, sister, of the Eastern religions, which one have you studied the most, or what is your preference?
The one I've studied the most would be Buddhism.
Buddhism, okay.
Only reason because when I first came into the nation, I've been in the nation almost 6 years now. But I came into the nation, I was Orthodox Muslim before I came into the nation, and in Supreme Wisdom, it just struck me in our student enrollment. Why would he mention Buddhism? And so I said, well, let me study this religion, which I always had a little. My brother's name is actually Buddha. His nickname is Buddha. So my mom always kind of talked about Buddhism a little bit, but to me, I know nothing happens for a reason. I know he didn't just willy-nilly put that in there, the age of Buddhism. So I just fell in love with it. And I watched a lot of Kung Fu movies, old Kung Fu movies from the 60s and 70s. So that would be the one. I've studied Zoroastrianism as well. I kind of tapped into former self, and so that's how I actually tapped into it, and then the universe tapped into me. And but that would be it. Buddhism, I just love. I have a lot more books on it.
I have a lot of books on Buddhism.
I love it. I absolutely. It's just I don't even know if I can say. It's like how we say Islam is just a way of life. That's how I feel about Buddhism. Like not really a real religion. It's just a whole mindset.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I like Buddhism is they pretty much don't believe in a creator God. And basically what he's saying is when you look at the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, he's basically saying, yeah, suffering exists. There's a way to get around it, but you got to do the work.
Right.
So you have to do it.
Right. That charger doesn't work. Here's this one.
Okay, where is everybody?
I have teenagers. I'm telling you, they're on Mother's Day hiatus.
No, we were just getting off Brother Batin's group.
Oh.
And they should be coming in. Make sure. Make sure I got the right one here.
Can you hear me?
Without magic, it's science. You know, if you disappear with the aid of science, brother, you ain't coming back. Yeah, we had a real interesting comment about that the other day when we were talking about, and I can't remember whether you were on or not, but we were saying like in the beginning, see if Allah, when he created the heavens and the earth, it can't be but one, because if there was another one exactly like him, then it would cancel him out.
Actually, Brother Jabril wrote an article. I remember it was in the Final Call newspaper, and the Final Call issue was around 1984 or 85. And he was talking about the unified theory of everything, the four forces.
Okay.
And he said that right now, he said that the scientists are trying to find what's called the unified theory of everything, where they combine all those forces together. He says, but they could never do that because only one person in the universe can have that knowledge at any one time. Because
Wow.
if two people had that, there would be two gods and they would cancel each other out.
How about that?
And I remember that article, and I had that Final Call somewhere. But I remember it was probably about 1984, 85. He says, but only one person at a time can have that knowledge in the universe, and that's what makes them God. I'm just paraphrasing it, but
yes, sir. I totally understand.
sir.
And you know, I've got a lot of those the lectures that Brother Jabril did back in the early days, you know, in like the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna try to get them transcribed. I just bought some software
All right.
that does it, even though it's not really that accurate, because I don't expect it to be that accurate with me, because I know I got that Southern dialect.
Mm-hmm.
But it may not necessarily be the case with Brother Jabril. And then I may just do some you know, I'm an audio engineer.
Oh, okay.
And so I got mastering software that I can enhance the voice, which I need to work on it with mine too, because I find different algorithms work differently, you know, on my voice, because I got Dragon, the nuance Dragon. I've got the professional individual version, but then I also got Otter, and I find that Otter is a whole lot better. It translates what I'm saying a whole lot better than Dragon.
Record. We'll go ahead and open up in prayer. Attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, surely I am being turned to thee, O Allah, trying to be upright. To him who originated the heavens and the earth, and I am not of the polytheist. Surely my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are all for Allah, Lord of the worlds. No associate has he, this am I commanded, and I am of those who submit. O Allah, thou art the King. There is no God but thee. Thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. I have been greatly unjust to myself, and I do confess my faults. Please, Allah, grant me protection against my faults, for none grants protection against faults but thee. Please guide me to the best of morals, for none can guide to the best of morals but thee. Please turn away from me the evil and indecent morals, for none can turn away from me the evil and indecent morals but thee. O Allah, bless Muhammad and bless the true followers of Muhammad, as thou didst bless Abraham and the true followers of Abraham, for surely thou art to be praised and magnified. O Allah, make Muhammad successful and make the true followers of Muhammad successful, as thou didst make Abraham successful and the true followers of Abraham successful, for surely thou art to be praised and magnified. Ameen.
Ameen.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Fatihah Muhammad, to whom all praise is due forever. I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted and living Christ, and now Mahdi at his right hand. And I bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is the Messiah in our midst today. It is in their names that I greet my family with the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, sir.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem.
Seemed like this month just shot right by.
I'm telling you, man.
Let's see, I think everyone here, I have your emails. Who is 215? $215? Okay, don't worry about it. All righty.
I think it's somebody from
Yes,
STW.
Here I am, 215, Durana Muhammad.
Durana.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that was the Master Farah Muhammad's sister's name, wasn't it?
It was supposed, yes, sir. That was my aunt. She heard, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah.
All praises be to Allah.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Do the share screen. And let me go here, here, and here. All right, praise be to Allah. Now, at the last minute, I had to, I was making salat, and 99% of the time, these ideas actually either come during salat or when I'm just quiet. And so I had to make some changes to this, and I pray Allah everything flows together. But I'm sure if Allah has given it, then it's meant to be given in this way. So tonight, we're going to do the Holy Qur'an and Dianetics. I have just a couple of ayats I want to piece through, but then the concept of fire in the mind. And one of the ayats is titled Al-Dukhan, which means it means the smoke, and also means the draught. And as I was parsing through this ayat, a picture came to mind. So we're going to use some demo kits tonight. Some of the things dealing with the fire department. And we're going to use fire as a demo kit to represent aberration. At any time, as I always say, anytime if anyone has any questions, please feel free to stop me. One of the reasons why I do the presentations with the PowerPoint is because I have a tendency to fly off on tangents, and the PowerPoint actually keeps me focused. So at any time you have a questions, please feel free to raise your hand. So the objectives, let me move this over a little bit here. So we're going to look at the significance of the Holy Qur'an in Dianetics and why the study of both of these are so important. Then we're going to deal with what's called the fire in the mind. And this is actually based on a thought by Allah's grace that came to me during Zuhur prayer this afternoon. And so I had to hurry up and put this into the presentation because that's when it was given to me. So the fire in the mind, we're going to look at the 7 gates of hell that's described in the Holy Qur'an. And we're going to show how these 7 gates of hell actually correspond to Dianetics. Then we're going to hit a couple of points in Al-Fatihah and how these relate to Dianetics. And then we're going to finish up on Surah number 44. And then I'm going to show a brief little clip, probably about 2 or 3 minutes. And in the clip, we're actually going to show what a fire looks like. And we're going to relate, if you can kind of mock this up in your mind, the building, we could say, represents the person's mind. The fire represents the aberration. And then the smoke that's inside the building represents what we're going to go into here in the surah. And then we're going to apply all this to ourselves. So we're going to take the Holy Qur'an, we're going to take the Dianetics and the application of self and put all this together to use the Dianetics and marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. So to begin, I wanted to start with this verse. It says, and on the day when we raise up in every people a witness against them from among themselves, and bring thee as a witness against these, and we have revealed the book to thee, explaining all things, and a guidance and a mercy and good news for those who submit. That's taken from Holy Qur'an, Surah 16, verse 89. The key here is the statement explaining all things. To explain means to make clear, to prove, to explain, to expound, to make plain and understandable. In the Bible, it says to prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. And I use that opening, that verse from the Holy Qur'an and that verse from the Bible, because if it's a book explaining all things, if the Holy Qur'an is a book explaining all things, then this would also include the principles found in the technology of Dianetics. And if we're able to find and extract these principles found in our Islam, then we could bring about a marriage between the supreme wisdom and the supreme technology. So the Holy Qur'an is a book that explains all things. In Surah number, I believe it's Surah number 98, it says a pure book wherein are all right books. So that would mean that the miracle of the whole, or one of the miracles of the Holy Qur'an is this: whatever truth exists in this universe, these truths are already in the Holy Qur'an. The Holy Qur'an is a living book. It's a book that evolves. And this is why, at least I think I can speak for everyone here, it seems like every Ramadan, we read the Holy Qur'an, and it seems as though we come across verses for the first time that we've never seen before. And then we say to ourselves, I know I must have read that verse before, because I've read the Holy Qur'an every Ramadan. But for whatever reason, every year certain ayats stick out and certain ayats do not. And it seems as though we come across ayats that we've never seen before. And I believe this is because the Holy Qur'an is a living book, and it evolves with us and we evolve with it. And this book explains all things. And I think this may be, and this is just my opinion, one of the reasons why we're taught that anytime the Most High Elijah Muhammad went to talk to anyone, he only carried one book. All he needed was the Holy Qur'an. So if we gain mastery, or we're on the path to mastery of this book, then this book will allow us to gain knowledge of, put us on the journey of gaining knowledge of all things. So now the fire in the mind. Allah tells us in the Holy Qur'an, and surely hell is the promised place for them all. It has 7 gates, for each gate is an appointed portion of them. Now, in a quick minute, I'm going to pose a question for a little feedback. The key here is we're going to look at hell, and we're going to look at 7 gates. And when you read this verse 15, verse 43, 44, there's a footnote that comes with this ayah. And in the footnote, it gives the names of the 7 words that are used to make reference to hell. I'm going to list them right here. First, we're going to deal with what is the meaning of gates? What are the 7 hells? And how does this correspond to Dianetics? So with Allah's help, we're going to look at the Arabic word for gates. We're going to look at these 7 hells, and we're going to marry these Islamic concepts to the concepts of Dianetics. So first, you have the word gates. And the word gate in Arabic is abwab, abwab. And it means to arrange in groups, in sections, in columns, or categories. It also means systematic arrangement. Now, I'm gonna pose a question to the class. What do we know in Dianetics that's categorized into groups, columns, sections, or categories in a systematic way? Would anyone come off mute to answer that?
8 dynamics.
Okay, we got the 8 dynamics. What else? Think of columns, sections, categories, and systematic arrangements.
Brother, the science of survival, I'm thinking about the Hubbard chart of human evaluation.
Yes.
Yes.
So when we look at the chart, it's arranged in columns, in sections, in groups. Now, when we further down the road, Mr. Hubbard also says that there's a relationship between the dynamics and the chart. So both answers are correct. So when you look at gates being abwab, this chart, technically speaking, could be considered a gate. So that would imply that in this chart are the 7 gates of hell. Does that make sense? Just if you just nod your head. I know everyone's on mute, but so here's where we're going to tie everything together. So when you look at these 7 gates, the first gate is called Jahannam, which means hell. The second gate is called Laza, which the literal translation is flaming fire. The third gate is called Hutama, means crushing disaster. The fourth one is called Sa'ir, which means burning fire. The fifth one is called Sakar, which means scorching fire. Then you have the sixth one, which is called Jahim, which is fierce fire. And then you have Hawiya, which means abyss. Now, the interesting thing about these seven descriptions of hell, years ago, working in the fire department, we have to understand the dynamics of fire. I didn't do it for this presentation. I might do this at another time, but these seven descriptions of hell, when they're put in the proper order and sequence, actually represents a cycle of fire that aligns with what takes place when you start a fire in a building, and the end result, it will actually go through these 7 stages when you're put in order. So this actually is a cycle of fire. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to take and address each one and align it with the Hubbard chart of evaluations. So when you look at Jahannam, the word Jahannam means hell. It means infernal. It's the realm of the devil or demons in which people suffer. So now, would anyone like to pose where this realm exists? What is the realm of the devil, or where the demons exist that causes suffering? This would be where?
On the low tone scale, emotion.
Who is that speaking? Because I don't.
Sister Tina.
Sister Tina. That's tone 2.0 and below. So these 7 levels of hell in the Holy Qur'an actually line up, and the gates of hell line up with the chart of human evaluation and the tone scale below 2.0. Now, I have to give praise and credit where credit is due. Allah teaches man by the pen what man knew not. This is something that came while I was making salat today, and I always have to give thanks and praise to Allah for these ideas, because some of us might say, I've never heard this before, and I would say, neither have I. So it is by Allah's grace that we're able to look at this today and marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech. But this hell, this realm, is the aberrated mind. Now, when you look at Laza, the flaming fire, it means to burn with rage. That's tone 2.0, 1.5, and 1.1 of the tone scale. Hutama, the crushing disaster. Crushing means, Hutama means collapse or breakdown. So what could this represent? Anyone? I got everyone running for the charts now.
That'd be right above 1.5. Anger.
Well, it could be. It could be. It could be. Hutama also means to stop functioning. So that'll make it a little more specific.
The apathy.
To succumb, to lose one's resolve, we're at tone 0.5. Apathy.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
So when we're talking about hell in the Holy Qur'an, and when you look at the lake of fire that we were always taught in the church, my opinion is this fire in this lake of fire is not on one level, we know it's a physical thing because we have received that in the teachings, but there's a fire that exists that no matter where you go, you bring it with you, and that is the aberrated mind. That is the inner torment. So these 7 layers of hell actually correspond perfectly with the chart of human evaluation. So when you look at Sa'ir, which means the burning fire, it means to kindle a fire. And then there's an ayat that says, and when they kindle a fire, then Allah takes away their sight and leaves them in darkness, blind, deaf, and dumb, so they return not. So when a fire is kindled, it's like when we get into an argument, one of the reasons why we don't argue during Ramadan is when we begin to argue, what happens? We kindle a fire. And when a fire is kindled, when we begin an argument, what does it do? It takes away our light. So we can't be spiritual and be aberrated at the same time. So we can't be spiritually aberrated, if that makes any sense. So it also means to flare up in anger. It means inferno. Now on this point, has any one of the believers ever heard of a book called Dante's Inferno?
Yes, sir.
That must have been Sister Joy.
Sister Tina.
No, but
Tina.
I was trying to come off mute. Yes, sir.
Now, the key thing about Dante's Inferno was this. That whole book lines up with auditing. Really, Dante's Inferno is made up of 3 parts. You have the first part, which is called the Inferno. You have the second part, which is called the Purgatory. And you have the third part, which is called the Paradise. In the Inferno, Dante strayed off the straight path. And the first part of the book, he's seen trying to climb up a mountain to get to God. He's trying to get to the sunlight. And the sun here represents God. But every time he tries to go up the mountain to get to God, he's driven back by these 3 beasts. So a person named Virgil comes into the picture and says, look, and this is the modern translation, look, Dante, in order for you to go up the mountain to get to God, you got to first descend into hell to understand the nature of sin. So what Virgil was telling him is, you can't get to God if you have these three beasts in your pathway, because these three beasts will always block your path. You have to understand what sin is in yourself. And then once he descended into hell, he was taken into the different circles of hell to understand what's called the 7 deadly sins. Then at the bottom, he came face to face with Satan that was frozen. And then he came up on the other side into what's called the purgatory. Well, the inferno represents the lower part of the tone scale. The purgatory, we could say, represents 2.5 up to 4.0, and the paradise could be the high tones above 4.0. But the moral of this story is, many of us want to get to God, and we think we can get to God, but we can't get through our own aberrations, our own shortcomings, our own defects in our character. We have to first understand the nature of our own aberrations and overcome them. Then we can ascend up. So in a nutshell, Dante's Inferno is actually describing, you can parallel it with the process of auditing. There's a certain portion in Dante's Inferno, the closer they got to what's called the city of Dis, which is where they were traveling to, the demons actually increased. And it parallels, the closer you get to the engram, that's where you get more and more of the aberrative or engramic commands. Does that make sense? Praise be to Allah. So to flare up, we could say that's 2.0. That's antagonism. That's when we at the point that we're beginning to descend. That's where our anger it just starts to be kindled. We become antagonistic. When you look at sakar, which means scorching fire, when you scorch something, it means to afflict painfully with censure or sarcasm. It means to cause intense heat or mental anguish. So now our heat, our fire, our emotion is not limited to just ourselves. Now it's being connected to someone else. Well, in the fire department, when we come up to a structure fire, the number one priority is to extinguish the fire in that building. The second priority is we have to make sure that it doesn't spread to the building that's next to it. That's called, when it's passing on to the next building. That's called an exposure. So sometimes the fire starts in one building, but it can be exposed to other buildings. Sometimes our anger and our emotions are contained within ourselves. And then sometimes our anger comes out and affects other people. So this is when it's not limited to just ourselves. Again, we're at 2.0 down to 1.1. Then when you have Jahim, which is the fierce fire, it means violently hostile or aggressive. Now we're again at 2.0 at 1.5. So it seems as though all of these characteristics of hell that are given to us in the Holy Qur'an are synonymous with all of the characteristics that are contained in the tones below 2.0. That's when we're capable of destructive action. Hawiyah is the abyss. This means to drop, to sink, or to be bent. Well, we know bent is a term that's used in the study tech. It means a decline in quantity or quality. So as we're descending down the tone scale, we are heading to the abyss. We are heading to that pit. It means to be bent out of shape, to be extremely upset or angry. So now can everyone see the correspondence between the gates and the chart and the hells and the tone scale? Okay, so we've made one marriage between the Dianetics, the Holy Qur'an, and the chart of attitudes. So now we're going to look at Al-Fatihah, and we're going to look at Surah Al-Dukhan, Surah 44. Any questions at this point before we go forward? Okay.
No, I just see it so clearly below 2.0 destruction, you know, how we see it in our people and what we're trying to do to help them. But that's all I wanted to say, brother.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you, sister. So everywhere in the Holy Quran where we're seeing fire, we could, if we transpose that to see that as the aberrated mind, then the Holy Quran becomes a book, a tech book that helps to explain aberration now. So why is it important for us to study the tech? Those that criticize our study of Dianetics may need to dig deeper into the study of the Holy Quran and our supreme wisdom. They may also need to study the other religions and their scriptures as instructed by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, if you look at the other religions, when you look at Buddhism and you read through what's called the Dhammapada, the Buddha is talking about the aberrated mind and the clear mind. If you look at Zoroastrianism, they're talking about good mind and bad mind. When you study Shintoism, Shintoism talks about what is straight and what is crooked. They believe everything that's crooked is, if you look at the terms, it's talking about an aberrated way of thinking, and straight lines represents the proper way to think. If we were to look at the Baha'i, we've all heard of the Baha'i faith, is that correct? Has anyone not heard of the Baha'i? In the Baha'i faith, they are firm believers that religion and science have to go hand in hand. And when you read the text, there's a book called the Kitab-i-Aqdas. It also is talking about different aspects of the mind. So the different religions and the prophets and the scriptures that they brought, when you go past the language and the terminology, all of these books are really talking about our relationship to our Creator with regards to getting the proper relationship with that aspect that is ourself, that is within ourself. So the various religions that are given at the various points of time actually point to spiritual truths that are congruent. So there's a saying that came to mind years ago: no one religion has the monopoly on truth. We know that what we've received is the fulfillment of the scriptures. But Allah tells us in the Holy Quran that for every nation, we have appointed acts of devotion. So every group of people have received prophets, have received scriptures in the language and in the symbolism of that group of people. So when you look at an act of devotion is like a prescription. Does that make sense? So when you give a prescription, you have to give a prescription that's fine-tuned to that individual. I'll give you an example. Years ago, as a paramedic, if I came across a person that had asthma, I couldn't just give them a breathing treatment. I couldn't just give them albuterol, which is one of the treatments used for asthma. We had to carry two treatments. One is albuterol, and one is something called ipratropium. Because a person that has asthma, they might be allergic to albuterol. So just because one person has asthma, someone has an asthma attack, they can't say, well, let me just let them use my medication to save them, because what works for you might actually kill them. This is why Islam had to be prescribed to us the way that our Savior gave it to us. Orthodox Islam, it's a good medication, but it doesn't solve all the signs and symptoms of the Negro in North America. We had to get a specific prescription. And in the medical field, you have what's called the 6 rights. You have to prescribe the right medication with the right route, with the right dose, at the right time. You had to give it to the right person. So our Islam had to be tailored specifically for us in North America, a group of people that lost their name, their language, their culture, their religion, their God. Orthodox Islam was given to individuals in the East. They didn't suffer from all the things that we suffered from. So that medication was good for them. But aspects of that prescription would be outdated for us today. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So now, so our understanding of Dianetics can give us a scientific and mathematical aspect of the mind with respect to the Holy Qur'an. So now, as we study Dianetics and we marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech, and when we understand our Islam and we're marrying our Islam to the Dianetics, we are able to grasp a deeper understanding of the mind, and we're able to grasp a deeper understanding of the tech. And I think it might have been in your group, Brother Batim, we were talking about this one time, whereas you have original people that are in the Church of Scientology, they have the tech, but they still have something missing. They need the supreme wisdom. We have the supreme wisdom and we need the supreme tech. And the union of these both is, again, what puts us at the top of the pyramid, because now we have the ability to go deeper into the science of the universe. We have the ability to tap into our supreme wisdom and our problem book. And by getting the higher levels of tone, and I have read in study guide number 21, and I believe it was Sister Ava that wrote this in there, that one of the purposes of study guide number 21 was to marry the mind with the spirit. I think that's how she phrased it. So there's something in study guide number 21 that is designed to even take us further up the tone scale. That'll be a subject for another time. And our understanding of the Holy Qur'an can give us a spiritual aspect of Dianetics. So now we're getting the best of both worlds now. So the understanding of our Islam and Dianetics will give us insight into many ideologies, faiths, and beliefs. And this helps to reinforce the concept that's found in our supreme wisdom, the 13 rules of instruction. Rule number 3, it says we must know and be able to prove at all times to the new converts that the lessons that our Savior Allah gave us to study and learn is the fulfillment of the prophecies of all the former prophets. Now, in order for us to understand that what we have is the fulfillment, wouldn't it make sense that we would have to know who the former prophets were, the scriptures that they brought, and what are the prophecies that they taught on? So for me, that would imply that it would behoove us to take time to understand different aspects of different religions so that we can bear witness that what we have is the fulfillment. And that was one of the things that Mr. Hubbard has done in the creation of human ability. He goes down a list of some of the areas or religions or spiritual ideologies that he has studied that represent the foundation of what he taught. And when you look at that foundation and when you look at those prophets in those books, that all comes from us. They're just, when you look at, there's a book called the I Ching. that deals with the hexagrams, and it deals with the concepts of duality. The I Ching, we could say, was the supreme wisdom of that time period. When we look at the work of Buddha and the Dhammapada, we could possibly say that was the supreme wisdom for that time period. When we look at Guru Nanak, who produced what's called Sikhism, or the Sikh faith, the text for the Sikhs, we could say, represented the supreme wisdom for that time period. But we live in a time period where we have received a book directly from the Lord of the universe. And what we have received is the fulfillment of all those former books, all those former prophets. I would go another step further to say that where it says a book explaining all things, and then where the Bible says there's many things I could tell you, but you cannot comprehend it now. But when he comes, he will lead you into a knowledge of all things. I would want to take a step further and say that the book explaining all things could possibly represent a book in human form. And that book could represent the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Because when we see him, we see the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when we see him, we see Master Fard Muhammad. Would that make sense? Could we accept that?
Yes, sir.
Funny thing about it, well, not funny, but there's an interesting thing about it. In number theory, in mathematics, you have something called a perfect number. And a perfect number represents a number that is the sum total of the numbers that come before it. There's only one number that exists that is the sum total of all the numbers that come before it. And that is the number 3. The number 3 is called the first perfect number because 3 equals 1 plus 2. Does that make sense? 3 is the sum total of all the numbers that come before it. The number 2 is the first prime number. And it's the only even or balanced prime number. And the number 1, well, that's Allah, because we say He, Allah, is one. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan represents the 3rd in that line. And he represents a perfect example, like a perfect number, that is the sum total of the 2 that come before him. Does that make sense? Just a little mathematics to throw in there. So there's a saying, and this comes from what's called the Rig Veda, that truth is one, but the wise know it by many names. So our understanding of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as represented by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, allows us to speak the language of the many nations, the many kindreds, and many tongues. And if we are obedient and steadfast, we will be able to speak the truths of all the religions, all the levels of mathematics, all the levels of physics and chemistry and psychology, because I believe that is our birthright. Because I believe that we're in what's called a modern day Renaissance. Now, how does that pertain to us today? Well, when you look historically, the Renaissance, the historical Renaissance, was a time period where the Muslims brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. And I just thought perhaps that, our job is to bring the world out of the Dark Ages today. So our job is to bring about a modern day Renaissance. So the rise of the Nation of Islam represents a modern day Renaissance. The tech that we're learning in conjunction with our supreme wisdom, in conjunction with self-improvement, in conjunction with everything the minister has given to us, puts us in the same position in the modern time that it put the Muslims in historically, that the Muslims at that time period brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. And I can't think of any age that's darker than the age that we're in now, which would mean that there would have to be another group of Muslims that would bring the world out of the Dark Ages today. Does that make sense? Praise be to Allah. Al-Fatihah. We're going to connect some things with Al-Fatihah to Dianetics. This right here is the Arabic translation of Al-Fatihah, but we're only going to deal with a couple of key points. We're going to look at Rabbil Alameen. We're going to look at ayat number 5, which says, Ihdina al-Sirat al-Mustaqim. We're going to look at the word An'amta, al-Maghdubi, and Adalin. So contained in Al-Fatihah, we're going to find the cycle of action, and we're going to find 3 pathways. And these 3 pathways will have ARC with Dianetics. So you have a cycle of change or a cycle of action. So in study guide number 9, that's titled Our Intimate Relationship with Rabbil Alameen, on page 198, Minister Farrakhan gives us this ayat. It says, glorify the name of thy Lord, the Most High, who creates, then makes complete, and who measures and then guides. Can anyone see the cycle of action or the cycle of change in that ayat? You can see it, Sister Cheryl? Praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to point it out to us?
Well, the first is create, continue, and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
Who creates, then completes. That's the continuance. Who measures is at the end, then who guides, we start over again.
We could say that. We could look at that. Because then you're talking about a cycle of action connected to another cycle of action.
Yes, yes, sir.
We could say that. So this, okay, we already said this. This AI has ARC with the cycle of action. Now, this cycle of change or cycle of action that's in Dianetics actually comes from the Bhagavad Gita, which is the religious book of the Hindu. And in the book, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, now Krishna is represented by a blue-black individual. And when you look at the description of Krishna, Krishna has correspondence with the self-accusing spirit. So Krishna represents the voice that's inside of self that guides, reproves, and exhorts, as Minister Farrakhan has taught us in self-improvement study guides. So when you read the Bhagavad Gita, you're actually reading a story that's dealing with, in a metaphorical way, a dialogue between an individual and their own self-accusing spirit. It's a real interesting read. But Krishna says that I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of creation. So this is where Dianetics gets its cycle of action. It comes from this book, the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, which is titled Divine Splendor. So when you, in the book itself, Brahma is called the creator. Vishnu is called the preserver, and Shiva is called the destroyer. At another point in the book, Shiva talking, Shiva says that there's not 3 different gods, but Shiva says, I am the one God that's represented in 3 different points in time. So Shiva is saying, when I'm at the beginning, I'm called Brahma. When I'm in the middle, I'm called Vishnu. And at the end, when I change or I destroy, then I'm destroyer. Now, these 3 aspects of God in the Bhagavad Gita correspond to 3 attributes of Allah, whereas Allah is called Al-Khaliq, and I think Brother Jeffrey mentioned the Creator today in his lecture, the Creator. The preserver is called Al-Hafiz. So when a person can memorize the Holy Qur'an, they're called a Hafiz, meaning they can preserve the Holy Qur'an in their mind. And when Allah is the destroyer or the one who causes death, Allah is called Al-Mumit, the one who causes death. But Brahma, as the creator, represents start. Vishnu represents change, and Shiva represents stop. Now, when you apply this to the attribute of Al-Rab, Allah creates, Allah measures and guides, and then Allah makes complete. Allah creates could be start. When you start something, you have to measure and guide it to its ultimate destination. So we could say measure and guide represents change, but we could also flip it the way Sister Cheryl had mentioned it, that once we complete a cycle, then we can measure and guide it to start another cycle. So both of those will fit in there. And to make complete could represent stop. So here's the first summary. The cycle of change or the cycle of action, start, change is stop, corresponds to the concept of Rab in the Holy Qur'an. It is based on the cycle found in the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient text of the original people. This tells us that the tech already belongs to us. It belongs to us. We just have to reclaim a knowledge of who we are and reclaim a knowledge of ourselves and our wisdom. Does anyone have any questions up to that point? Okay, let's keep going forward. So now the three paths in Al-Fatihah. You have what's called the Sirat al-Mustaqim. That's the straight path. Then you have what's called the Sirat al-Dalin. We say Sirat al-Dalin and Anta alayhim. Now we have what's called the straying path. And we have Sirat al-Maghdubi alayhim, the wrathful path. Now look at how these three paths are arranged. The straight path is where we want to be. Then you have the straying path and you have the wrathful path. Do you see a pattern in here?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Brother Batin. What pattern do you see?
Well, it's a gradient.
Yes.
It's a gradient path. First, you're going straight, then you stray,
Mm-hmm.
and you get the consequence, the effect of straying.
Yes,
which
sir.
is the wrath.
The wrath. Does anyone else see any other patterns here? Could we say animal, human, divine? From the study guides, animal level, human level, divine level. Could we say aberrative, pre-clear, and clear? Does that make sense? These three paths.
Say that again, brother.
If we say the wrathful path, no, so in the self-improvement, Minister Farrakhan gives us three levels of growth and development: animal, human, and divine.
Mm-hmm.
We have what's called the nafs amara, the nafs lawama, and the nafs muta'ina. And the nafs lawama, we're taught in the self-improvement study guide, that is the self-accusing spirit. When we begin to stray, that's when the self-accusing spirit kicks in. If we kill the messenger in ourselves, then we're going down to the other path. If we listen to the voice in our head, then we go up towards the straight path. But we could also say that the Sirat al-Maghdubi could represent the aberrated mind. Sirat al-Dalin could be the pre-clear, who's striving to get away from the aberrated mind to get to the clear mind, which would be Siratul Mustaqim.
I see one also, Brother Lukman.
Mhm.
I see examine is the wrath if we're getting chastised and always going through something, like people say bad luck, always going through something, then we should examine that. And then we move up to the straight, strain, because now we're trying to get back on the right path. So we're analyzing ourselves to see, okay, how did I get to where I was on the way to, okay, I see it now. So that's correction, the straight path.
I didn't see that one, but that works. That works for me. Praise be to Allah. But now, could we say that these three paths line up with the tone scale?
Yes, sir.
Because the straying path seems like it hits right at boredom. We say an idle mind is the devil's workshop. When we're idle, that's when we start to stray. Could we say that straying starts at idleness? Which is one of the reasons why we got to keep ourselves busy. During Ramadan is when we sit idle. The more we sit idle, I don't know, maybe for you, but I know for me, that's when food starts popping up. Excuses start coming up to break the fast. So for me, I have to stay busy, constantly staying busy. The straight path seems like it would be around, on the emotional tone scale, around 3.0. We could say the straying path hits at 2.0, and then the wrathful path is everything that's below 2.0. Could we say that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir.
So we say, guide us on the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors. The right path is called Siratul Mustaqim, and the word favors is an'amta. And the thing about an'amta is Sirat means way, path, or road. Mustaqim, the root word is qiyam. And that word means to correct, to reform, or amend. It means to resurrect. So in the study guides, Sister Ava teaches about al-qiyamah, which is the resurrection, to raise from the dead. But the word qiyam also means to determine. And we used this word a couple of days ago in our Quranic reading, to be sound. So the word in Arabic, qiyam, which means resurrection, also means determinism. So the resurrection that's described in Islam is the restoration of self-determinism of Dianetics. So these two terms, these two texts, again, marry together. Resurrection is self-determinism. Islam provides the spiritual approach to resurrection, and Dianetics provides the scientific process. Again, just my opinion. We're taught about resurrection. We're given self-improvement, the basis for community development, as part of our prescription. But the Dianetics is another medication or prescription we can take. And there's a thing in the medical field that when you take a medicine, a prescription, sometimes they'll have you take another one, which will be a catalyst to make this one even better, or to make it even stronger, or to allow it to work faster. Does that make sense? Praise be to Allah. Now, favors, on the straight path, the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors. What is favors? It means to live in luxury. So, I wouldn't mind living in an apartment that looked like that, with that kind of a view. Favors means prosperity. It means happiness. It means wealthy. I don't have that right there, but I wouldn't mind having it. To be in peace. So the favors that's described in Al-Fatihah is like it's telling us, guide us on this straight path. Guide us on the path of determinism. So self-determinism, can we say that self-determinism leads to luxury?
Mhm.
Well, we're taught, sit yourself in heaven at once. We're not told that the minister's going to do it. We're not told that anyone else is going to provide our heaven. Our instructions are, sit yourself in heaven. Sit yourself is self-determinism. That is to postulate.
That's right. That's right.
That is the greatest desire of our brothers and teachers. That means our instructions are to postulate, to build a heaven for ourselves. This is because Allah never changes a favor which he has conferred upon a people until they change their own condition. And because Allah is hearing, knowing. So when we make our salat, I don't know if you experience this, but by Allah's grace, I believe we all do. But I know for me, one of the reasons why I strive to stay on my prayers is because it is during my time of salat when some of the greatest ideas come to mind. And then having the ability to share these ideas, not from a perspective of, oh boy, look at what I've done, but it's, oh boy, I'm thankful to Allah that he has found some use for a fool like me. And I have learned over the years by Allah's grace that every time I've emptied my cup, Allah fills it again. So in doing what I do, it is my way of giving thanks and praise to Almighty God, Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Fatihah Muhammad. And to change my condition, I know when I hit that prayer rug, Allah will give me the ideas to change my condition, but I know I have to do the work. That's called self-determinism. When we get those ideas, I think we had mentioned this either today or yesterday in Brother Batin's and Sister Belinda's group, that when we get that brand new idea, that's called a theta postulate. A theta postulate is an idea that comes out of the blue that you never thought of before. That's like tapping into what's called the Akashic records. That's coming into contact one-on-one with the God of the universe. Does that make sense? Praise be to Allah. So the reward, so self-determinism is the reward for the destruction of the devil, which is peace and happiness. So in Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 40, what will be your reward? It says peace and happiness. I will give all I have and all within my power to live to see this day, which I have waited for 379 years. But we have to do it ourselves. It's like in Buddhism. If you want nirvana, if you want to solve the problem of attachment, guess what? You got to do it. You and I have to defeat the devil that is in ourselves. We have to be our own savior. The minister can only give us the prescription and the process. We have to do the work. And I think, and again, I'm this is off on a tangent, but this is where it is in my spirit. One of the problems I see possibly that will take place, and I pray that I'm wrong, that those of us that have made the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan an idol, when he departs, our idol will depart with him. And it's going to cause more of an aberrated mind if we're not connected to the God of the universe. And this is why Minister Farrakhan has told us not to make him into an idol. We have to be our own savior, connected to the savior, in harmony with those that have been sent, the Most High Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who have given us the instructions on how to get where they are. So the straight path is what we make. No one else can put us on the straight path. There's a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I would recommend everyone read that book. It's one of the most beautiful books you can ever read. But one of the things he says is, he says with regards to teaching, he says, a teacher can give you knowledge, but they can't give you their understanding. The minister's job is to give us the knowledge, but he can't give us his understanding. That we have to gain for ourselves. Everyone all right so far?
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah. The straying path, Siratul Dalin. It says when we wander off the straight path, we come to what's called the straying path. Now, aberration is defined as the departure from rational thought. The actual word aberration is defined as straying from the right or normal way. So as soon as we begin to stray from the straight path, we are indicating the presence of an aberration. Aberrare, which is the Latin, is made up of the prefix ab, which means away from, and errare, which means to wander. And if I'm not mistaken, it also is the root word for the word error. The word dala, from the root word from dalin, means to be in error or delusion. Now, a question for the students, the young scientist classroom. What concept in Dianetics talks about error?
I want to say the reactive mind.
Yes, it is the reactive mind, but let's try to get a little more specific. When you read the first, I think it's the first book of Dianetics, the very beginning, before he starts to get into the tech, he starts to talk about he talks about error, but he talks about a specific concept to describe error.
Commands in the
Once I show it to you, you're gonna be like, oh, that's right. You're gonna kick yourself for it. But anyone want to take a shot?
Aberration.
It is a form of aberration, but it's something even more specific. I'll let you off the hook. The held down 7.
Oh God, I thought about that. Golly.
The held down 7. So Siratul Dalin in Al-Fatihah corresponds or has ARC with the held down 7 to be in error. And it says in the Dianetic Technology Dictionary, an enforced wrong datum. It's jammed thinking because of a misunderstood or misapplied datum. So why do we begin to stray from the straight path? It's because we have the wrong perception of something. Someone said something to us and we took it the wrong way and we thought they were saying it because of this. And then now we're stuck in our own mind. And then we talk to them, we say, no, that's not, I said it that way because I was going through this over here and my mind was just, so we carried that around with us our whole life. And I'll give you a prime example. About 7 years ago, my oldest daughter got upset and she stopped talking to me. This was in 2014. Stopped talking to me altogether. Stopped talking to me for 6 years. In my mind, it was like Allah saying, just be patient, she'll come around. So I just had to wait. It's painful when you have a child that has stopped talking to you and you don't have an idea why. And then finally, my middle daughter kind of tied us together and we spoke. And she explained to me why she was upset. She had went through something. And I said to her, I said, my oldest daughter's name is Asia. I said, Asia, I said, I didn't even know that you had went through that. And had I known, or if you would have told me, I would have helped you in a way where you wouldn't have to have endured that situation. So I didn't even know. So she had to realize that all those years that we lost were based on misinformation in her mind, whereas if she would have just spoke to me, it would have cleared the whole thing up. So sometimes we carry baggage around, and it's not because someone else has done something to us, it's because our own misunderstanding. We have misunderstood information. We have misapplied datum in our mind. And it's years that we lose that we could have had, we could have had those, but now we have that time. We talk once or twice a week now. And, I have to say that was something that maybe it had to be ordained because it happened, but it was something that she had to go through on her journey in life. But I just say that to say that sometimes we carry around baggage that we really don't need to carry around. That's the lesson that I learned from that anyway. So the path upwards is going up the tone scale, and that leads to the straight path, which is equal to the path of self-determinism. That would also imply that the path downwards leads to the Siratul Mogdubi, the path of wrath. So the path of wrath, Mogdubi, means to become angry, vexed, irritated, a fit of rage, angry outburst, or tantrums. Well, we already have proven that right there represents the tone levels below 2.0. In Dianetics, when we're below that level on the tone scale, it's called dramatization. And then dramatization means the duplication of engrammic content, entire or in part, by an aberree in his present time environment. Aberrated conduct is entirely dramatization. It's thinking or acting in a manner that is dictated by masses or significance contained in the reactive mind. He talks about ridges and dispersals in the mind. And when we're dramatizing, the individual is like an actor playing his dictated part and going through a whole series of irrational actions. So below the tone scale, we're our parents used to say to us, you better stop acting out. That's basically what we're doing. We're acting out. We're reading a script in a movie and the character doesn't belong to us. So to summarize this second part, the word Rob has ARC with a cycle of change. The straight path has agreement or ARC with self-determinism of Dianetics. The straying path agrees with the held down 7. And the wrathful path has agreement with low tone characteristics. So have we made the connection so far between the Holy Qur'an and Dianetics? Praise be to Allah. Last part, Al-Dukhan. It's called the drought and is also called the smoke. Holy Qur'an, Surah 44, Ayat 10 through 12 says, so wait for the day when the heaven brings a clear drought enveloping men. This is a painful chastisement. Our Lord remove from us the chastisement. Surely we are believers. The key words here will be the clear drought. We're going to deal with the term enveloping, the painful chastisement, and the concept of removing. Now, would anyone like to take a guess as to where this is leading us with regards to aberration? Can anyone interpret that ayat with regards to Dianetics? If not, I'll keep going. You want to take a stab at it, Brother Batin?
I'm checking it out now. Let's see.
Okay, Sister Cheryl.
Just thought about clear.
Okay.
I don't know whether that's correct or not. I just thought about being clear.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that one, brother.
Okay. Well, this ayat, we're gonna hit those little words real quick, and this is where we're gonna go look into a demo kit. So what could be the clear drop? What could be the painful chastisement? What is the meaning of remove? And we're going to look at how this all connects with Dianetics. So now when I was thinking about this image came to my mind. Al-Dukhan means the drought, but it also means smoke. Now, again, whenever I think of smoke, I think of fire. So the word Dukhan means, the literal translation in Arabic means to fume, but it also means a smoky atmosphere. It means low visibility, and it means impaired vision. Now, the reason why this is so important in the field of firefighting, and this is where the demo kit is going to come in, oftentimes we have to go into a burning building, and these environments are full of smoke. And what happens is, have you ever noticed, you ever see the video, you see the firefighters go into the building and they start breaking out windows? Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Some people think that we break windows just to have fun, just to break windows. They don't understand why we do that. Does anyone understand why the firefighters break the windows?
Does it have something to do with the oxygen going
Yes.
out or coming in?
Coming in. That is one part of it. When a building is on fire, the temperatures inside the building can range anywhere from 500 to 1,000 degrees. Me personally, the hottest room I've ever been in was 1,178 degrees. And what happens is you have approximately 3 minutes to get in and knock the fire down before the room, it's called flashover. Everything, when it gets to a certain temperature, everything in the room will auto ignite, including the firefighters. So you have one team that goes in to extinguish the fire. You have another team outside, they break the windows. So in breaking the windows, what you're doing is the whole house is full of smoke and you can't see. So by breaking the windows, the smoke leaves and the visibility increases, the heat goes out and the temperature decreases. So you have an increase in visibility and you have a decrease in temperature, and that's a process called venting. It's called when we're venting the building. When a person is angry and you say, just go ahead and let them vent, what are you doing? You're allowing them to get the emotion out, because right now their vision is decreasing and their anger is increasing. So when you let them vent, you let them get that emotion out. When you actually take them through Dianetic processing, by letting the charge out, what are you doing? You're increasing the vision, their ability to see, and you're decreasing the charge, which is decreasing the emotion. Does that make sense? So as I was studying Dianetics, I was corresponding that to the study of what we do at the fire department. So really, an auditor and a pre-clear are like, in the fire service, you're not supposed to go into a fire by yourself. There's supposed to be teams of 2. Well, when you go into an aberrated mind, you have an auditor and a pre-clear, right? So the auditor and the pre-clear represent spiritual firefighters, basically, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna show you a clip of a burning house, and here's how I want us to mock this up. The house represents a person's mind. The fire is the aberration. The firefighters represent the auditor and the pre-clear. And then once they put the fire out, you're gonna see the smoke, and the smoke is actually gonna take away the vision. And that's the Al-Dukhan. Everyone all right so far? Is this making sense?
Yes, Brother Lukman,
Yes.
when you mentioned the word venting,
Mm-hmm.
It took me to the canning class that we had in the MGT, and one of the processes when you're doing canning
Yes.
is that you have to vent the pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
And just for, I quickly just went to look that up so I could give you trying to clear my screen so I can get to the definition here. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, when you deal with pressure cookers, that's why you have to have that weight that's on the top, because you definitely have to let that pressure out, or the pressure cooker will explode. It's the same way with people. When you look at aberration and you look at people that are going off and doing crazy things, this could represent people whose internal pressure has hit a point that has caused them to explode because they didn't have the ability to vent. Did you find your definition?
Right, and it says here that be sure to vent the canner with steam exiting for the specified length of time to prevent air becoming trapped in the closed canner. Trapped air lowers the temperature obtained for a given pressure and results in underprocessing. And I thought that was very interesting as compared to the whole process of the auditing process.
Mm-hmm. It's the same process, just on two different levels. There's one truth, but the wise know it by many names. We can begin to take different things and we can see the principles actually have ARC with one another.
Yes, sir.
So when you're venting a building, it's actually the same as reducing charge in a pre-clear. And all this is the same thing that happens in the mind. Because when a person is fuming, what's taking place in their atmosphere? They have low visibility. You have impaired vision. So when we're emotional, we can't see straight. Does that make sense? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me find this clip real quick. Let me see if I can find it here. Let me pull it up. Okay. Okay, now again, the house represents the mind. This is how we're going to mock this up. The fire represents the aberration. And the individuals going into the structure are like the auditor and the pre-clear. This is like a demo kit that represents an aberrated mind. Does that make sense?
All right, clear at the top of the stairs.
So did we see how as soon as they put the water in that fire, everything just went black? That's Dukhan. That's the smoke. That scenario was what came to mind in dealing with aberration. We could say on one level that house was aberrated. the house was aberrated. And that fire was the rage going through. That could represent the anger. That's what the inside of our mind looks like. It's aberrated. Can everyone see the parallels between aberration and the video that I just showed you? Does that make sense? Give it a little mass to understand it?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So when you look at the word dukhan, to fume also means something such as an emotion that impairs one's reasoning. It's a state of excited irritation or anger. It's rage. And the word enveloping means to overcome or overwhelm. So the clear drop which envelops men could be describing the result of individuals being overcome by emotions and a rage that comes at them from every side. The painful chastisement translates to mental agony and torment. So when it says, our Lord removed from us, now here's an interesting thing about this word in Arabic. The Arabic word is kashafa. But the word kashafa actually has 4 different meanings that could represent another cycle of action. It means to search. It means to uncover. It means to clear up. And it means to remove. Excuse me. Now, can anyone explain how this could represent a cycle of action with regards to auditing? Go ahead, Sister Cheryl.
Brother, when I audit, I have them go over it until the charge comes off, and I see them come up and they kind of laugh.
Okay. At the beginning of the processing, what's like the first thing you do when you start the processing?
I brief them on what I'm going to do.
Okay.
What we're going to do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You take them down the time track.
To do what?
You ask them to search for a particular incident.
You're asking them to search.
That's right.
And then as you search,
Try to find.
so then you have to uncover.
Cover.
Right.
And then you do what?
Clean it up. Take the
You clean
charge
it up,
off.
you clean it up, or you reduce the charge. And then what happens? You have a release. All 4 of those words actually come under the one word in Arabic, which means remove. The word is kashafa. So this one word represents a cycle of action. And the thing about it is, in the fire service, as soon as we go into a building, the first thing we do is we search for life and we search for the fire. Once we identify no one's in the building, now we have to uncover, we have to find the fire. And then once we find the fire, we have to clear it up. It's like you reduce the charge in a person, we have to reduce the fire, and then we do what? We remove it, we extinguish it. So the same process in putting out a fire is the same process of reducing charge in a pre-clear. Same thing.
But Brother Lukman,
Yes.
in the smoke, I'm kind of like lost on the smoke part of the fire, because because the firefighters represent the auditor, right? Okay, so they put the fire out, which is the aberration, and then there's smoke. And you said the smoke means they can't see. You can't see. So that's where I'm lost, because after the fire, the aberration was removed, we should be able to see.
Okay.
So,
okay, understand from this point. The only reason why I want you to see the smoke was I want you to see what it looks like when the smoke is present. Separate that from the process. The smoke itself is the dukhan, meaning the chastisement. So keep in mind that before the firefighters get there, that room is full of smoke. So when a person is aberrated, you can't see. So I understand your question. At the time that they put that fire out, I want to stop the demo kit there as far as the auditing, but I wanted you to see the smoke from the perspective of the lack of visibility when smoke is present. Does that make sense? When the smoke is present, you can't see. So take that smoke and put it at the beginning of that process. When a person is aberrated or angry, that means their vision has decreased. And that word in Arabic is al-dukhan. But even when they extinguished the fire, you couldn't see. That was just the process of putting the fire out. But the concept I wanted you to see is how the smoke has the ability to take away your sight.
oh, okay.
Okay. See, when there's a saying in Buddhism. There's a saying in Buddhism. The fire is like anger. And the Buddha said that when you hold on to anger, it's like swallowing poison with the thought of making the other person sick. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So when we hold on to anger, that anger is decreasing our visibility. That's the dukhan, that's the smoke, that's the mental and the spiritual smoke that we have. But when we're angry at someone else, that anger becomes a poison that poisons us, and we hold on to resentment towards other people. Is like swallowing poison with the thought of making that other person sick. You can't make them sick. In other words, whatever anger we have or resentment, we need to let it go because it's not hurting anyone else except ourselves. That's the smoke. That's
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm seeing from what you're saying and what I'm seeing is that after the fire is put out, the smoke is there. It was there before, but it's there now. But the fire is out, so the smoke can go away, so that eventually you can see clearly.
Yes. So now you had to get through the smoke to get to the fire, and once you extinguish that fire, you're going to get a little bit of smoke, but that smoke is a sign that you have cleared up the problem. It's like when you audit someone, you have to get through certain things to get to your basic. And then you have a flood of emotions that represents that you have actually touched where you need to be and put the fire out.
Okay, so without the fire, then the person can see the smoke for what the smoke is.
Yes.
Okay. It's smoke.
In all actuality, when you put that fire out, it's actually steam. It's actually the result of the water hitting the fire. That's actually a rush of steam that you're seeing in there.
So it's even less of a smoke, it's a steam, so it's on its way out. But
yeah, it's on its way out.
Okay, praise be to Allah. Thank you.
Okay.
Sister, someone else had their hand up.
Yes, Brother Lukman.
Yes,
I also related it to, not as well as anger, is I looked at the fire as being torment. And
Yes.
when a person is aberrated, you know, they come with their aberration, it could be that they're tormented with a thing, but they don't know what's causing it. So that smoke then represents the fact that they can't see what needs to be cleared up.
Yes. Yes. You hit it right on the head. And the interesting thing about fire is it actually moves through a building as if it had a mind, as if it was alive. And that's the crazy thing about it. You would actually think it's a living thing moving through the building, but it's just based on physics of thermodynamics. But you're absolutely right. That could represent torment. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to find what's called the seat of the fire, or the source, and we have to attack it at the source. The source of the fire is like the basic. That makes sense, right? That's the basic. Okay. Let's see. So kashafa, to search. Mr. Hubbard says this: it was the search for this portion of the mind which led to the resolution of the problem of insanity, psychosomatic ills, and other aberrations. As soon as he can no longer find physically painful engrams, he goes back to search for painful emotional engrams, and so forth, alternately as necessary. So the Dianetics aligns with Islam, which aligns with the fire service. Kashafa means uncover. This functional mechanism managed to bury itself from view so thoroughly that only inductive philosophy, traveling from effect back to cause, served to uncover it. When the late moments of painful emotion are released, the auditor can go immediately to the early area and find engrams of physical pain, which he had not hitherto been able to uncover. To clear up, individuals on the normal level of this social culture associate hidden past personalities with present personalities they meet. Straight wire can easily clear up this situation. So straight wire is another form of firefighting on the mental and spiritual level. The 3.0 does not have to have locks addressed as individual incidents, but in order to clear up the case, scanning of locks is necessary, as will be seen in the next column. This is both from Science or Survival. And remove. To raise a person on this tone scale, it is only necessary to uncover or convert theta from in theta. Remove, in other words, the stores of turbulence from a person's life or render them unrestimulated. So in a fire, you're actually converting heat into steam. That's the whole process of putting the fire out. You're converting heat into steam. You're taking in theta and you're converting it into theta, or you can say you're turning in mist back into mist. So the summary is Holy Qur'an, Al-Dukhan, has agreement with Dianetics. The vapor or the smoke has agreement with the aberrated mind. The removal has alignment with Dianetic processing, specifically with the auditing as well as the straight wire. So in closing, fire serves a purpose. So we talked about the bad parts of fire, but on the level of Islam, why do we go through the trials that we go through? Allah says in the Holy Qur'an, and that he may purge those who believe and deprive the disbelievers of blessings. Do you think that you will enter the garden while Allah has not yet known those from among you who strive hard, nor know the steadfast? So Allah uses the fire to destroy the disbelievers, but he uses that same fire to actually purify the believers. So if we're a believer, if we're going through a trial, if we're going through difficulties, Allah teaches us that trials purify. We're being purified. Those that don't have this understanding, which could fall under the category of disbelievers, they will stay in that process of fire. For the believer, the fire is just a process that leads us to purification. The disbelievers, that process is what will actually take them further and further down. Does anyone have any questions?
I I don't think this is a question, but it was a cognition. It reminded me of that verse in the Holy Qur'an. I believe that was 54, 50, 50, 50, 51, 56, I think it was. 51, 56, how the jinn and the men, did it say, serve Allah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And yes, I can see how that is serving Allah, because the fire destroys, the jinn destroys the disbeliever, but it increases the believer in faith. Mhm.
There's
Right.
another ayat that says, with regards to enemy, it says, in between him and thee where there is enmity would be as a warm friend. And I always looked at that ayah as being that someone who's been put in our life to be a pain in our backside is actually put there to make us better. The way it came to me one day was, I was teaching what's called the nitrogen cycle. I used to work as a GED instructor, and I was reading about how farmers use manure to make plants grow stronger and produce better fruit. And then I looked at that and I said, yeah, sometimes God has to put crappy people in our life to make us better. And that's the way it always stuck in my head. I didn't use that term, but I use a different term. But sometimes you have some real crappy people that come into our life. Well, those are just manure people, and their job is to actually help us build better character. Minister Farrakhan said it like this, closing the gap. He says, some people are like sandpaper and some people are like wood. He says, if you could talk to the wood about the sandpaper people, I'm paraphrasing, the wood can't stand sandpaper people because the sandpaper people are abrasive and rubs them the wrong way. But eventually, the sandpaper will lose its grit, and then the wood becomes smooth. And then the wood could possibly say, I'm so glad that I came in contact with the sandpaper people.
Brother Jabril used to use that analogy quite a bit too. He used to say that I would rather be the wood instead of the sandpaper, because the grit will wear off of the sandpaper where the wood is being refined.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think it might have been him that said that in Closing the Gap instead of that. Yeah, I think he was the one that said that in Closing the Gap. So thank God for the manure people.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So with that being said and done, any last comments, thoughts, concerns, suggestions, or questions before we close it out?
That's a wonderful session.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah. Who was it that posed the question about words matter in the email?
It was Sister Tina.
Okay, I thought that was the video of Dr. I think it's Dr. Masaru Emoto in the video with Dr. Mona Harrison. Did that answer the question?
Well, it helped a lot. I didn't see the one with Emoto. I didn't see that one yet. I have to watch that one. But the one with our sister Mona Harrison, yes, it did. It really solidified what was in my mind. I just needed to have a better understanding of what I was thinking in my mind, and you helped with that.
Praise
very much so. Yes, sir.
Dr. Emoto, just to sum it up in a quick little synopsis, he took water and he froze it, and he would cut the water, the ice into sections, and he would see distorted crystals that were real ugly. And then he would freeze certain water, and he would take water and put it in glasses, and he would play certain music, and then he would freeze it. And he noticed that the water that had been around classical music, when it was frozen and he looked at it under the microscope, it formed these real beautiful patterns. And when he froze water that was around horrible music, the crystals were distorted. And then he further discovered that he could take the word love. He wrote love on a piece of paper and put it on a glass of water and froze that water. And just by writing love on that and putting it on the glass of water and then freezing it, the water would produce beautiful structure. By putting the word hate on the cup, on the paper, and putting it on the water, it would produce crystals that were distorted. So he realized intention towards the water actually had an effect on the water. Then he was able to take different samples of water from different parts of Europe and different parts of Japan, and the water was distorted. And in one part of Japan, I think it was, they prayed or something for 6 months. All they did was pray around this body of water. And then when they checked the samples of the water 6 months later, it was showing a change in the structure of the crystals. So the concept is, if our body is 75% water, then the words we use towards one another and the thoughts we use towards ourselves has the ability to change the structure of the water within our body. That itself will add to our aberration. So words do matter.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Brother
sir.
Lukman, can I just share what was on my mind? What's in my mind?
Of course, please, by all means.
Well, what's in my mind, and like I said, the information you gave, it just solidified it for me. The brain is on water, right? And
yes,
right, is that right? Okay,
yes,
so the lessons that have been given to us to memorize, to recite, to hold in our minds, it has to do something with how our brains are restructured, because they came from God. Allah brought us these lessons. So yes, memorizing and understanding, yes, we have to understand, but we were told to recite them by heart. So for us to have all this other knowledge, which is necessary, we cannot forget to hold what was given to us in our minds. So the ministers talked to us during Savior's Day. That started the process for me for going back to revisiting my lessons and memorizing them by heart. Understanding them, that's going to come. But to hold them in my mind, that's paramount, because those were instructions from God. So that's what I'm practicing now. And I'm seeing a change in myself. It's gradient, but I'm along with what Brother Patine has been helping me with, the gains that I've had in STW and the gains that I'm having through your class. It's helping me to become more aware of what God has already given us. And to go back and revisit that and follow the instructions of holding it in our mind, because when he comes to test us, what if he says, can you recite such and such and so, and we'll think, oh, that's irrelevant. No, not with God, because he gave it to us. So that's what my thoughts are. So you just solidified it with the videos that you sent. Yes, sir.
I just put something in the chat. It's called SQ3R, and this is why it's relevant when you said the word recite. SQ3R, if you Google this or go to YouTube and pull this up, this is a study technique. And I remember learning this in college. But the study technique deals with, you have different ways to learn. Some people are visual learners. Some people are acoustical learners. They learn by hearing. some learn by sight. So the SQ3R, the 3 R's mean read, recite, and review. So when you read something and you recite something, you're actually recording the information in 2 different aspects of your mind. You have one part of your brain that deals with the recording of acoustics or sound. You have another part of the brain that records what you see. The occipital lobe records what you see. You have the acoustic centers that are on the sides, and then you have the short-term and long-term memory. And by reading the lessons, we're recording it in one part of our brain, but by reciting, we're actually recording it in another part of our brain as well. So we're duplicating the recording in different aspects of our brain. That's why read and recite are so significant. But you're absolutely
SQ3R.
SQ3R.
SQ3R. And this is deja vu. What you just said, part of what you just said, I heard it before. Deja vu, it just now happened.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes,
So with
sir.
that, family, if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like to see covered, please put that in the email, and I'll take those suggestions and integrate it into our next session, inshallah. But if there's no more comments, no more thoughts, no more suggestions.
Well, Brother Lukman, what you said about SQ3R, where can I find that? What you just said, where can I find it?
If you go to YouTube, because see, I like watching videos. If you go to YouTube and just type in SQ3R, you should find it. I'll post I'll put some links in the emails where you can find it to actually use it to study it. It's a study technique that I still use to this day, and I've been out of college, oh my God, 30 years now. So time flies, but I still use it. I use that along with the study tech. It's a wonderful tool. So I'll put that in the email. With that being said and done, brothers and sisters, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. I want to thank you for your attention and your support. And I pray Allah that we will make this better and stronger and bring some more science and mathematics and allow us to grow into the scientists that I know we are. So with that being said and done, I want to dismiss myself with the greeting words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum.
Salam, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you, family. I trust me, I thoroughly enjoy this. I love, this is my purpose in life. We'll go ahead and close out in prayer. Brother Batim, would you do us the honors, please?
Absolutely. Attention, prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praises are due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master of this day of judgment in which we now live. To Thee alone do we serve, and to Thee alone do we beseech for help. O Allah, guide us on the right path, the path of those You have bestowed favors, and not of those whom Your wrath has brought down, nor of those who go astray. Ameen.
Amen. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem.
All right. All right. Let's talk sometime this week, brother.
Anytime you're ready, brother.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks a lot.